So chances are you're watching this video because you ran out of space on your PS5. You downloaded Warzone like the rest of us, and now that's the only game you could play. But now that Sony has finally unlocked the M.2 slots within the PS5, we can finally utilize M.2 sticks like this one here and this one over here. And these are just two to name a few, but there are so many options to choose from. So then it begs the question, which is the best one to get? Well, I'm gonna answer that question as well as any other question you guys might have regarding these M.2 sticks. So without further ado, let's get right into it. If you guys like any of the products I talk about in today's video, you guys can head over to the description down below and you can find links for everything. And as an added side note, those links do help my channel out with no extra cost to you. So once again guys, thank you so much. Okay, so now that the PS5 M.2 slot is finally unlocked, we first have to go through the criteria of what type of SSDs can actually work within that slot. Because after all, I have two SSDs here which look like they're gonna work, but actually only one works. Now there are a couple criteria that your SSD has to abide by or else it's not going to work. The first one is that it must be PCI 4.0. If you use PCI 3.0, it's not going to work. Linus Tech Tips did a whole video on this of just trying to use a PCI 3.0 in the PS5 and it ended up with an error message. So huge. Do not buy PCI 3.0, it's not gonna work. You must buy PCI 4.0. Now criteria number 2, it must have a read speed of 5500 megabytes per second. Now this one is kind of a sketchy point here because Linus Tech Tips had also did a video on this testing out if you got below 5500 if it's gonna work, and it turns out it actually did work. So it's kind of sketchy because PS5 officially said that it has to be over 5500 in order for it to work with the PS5, but if you do get below it, I think you might be able to get by, but I would highly recommend you do not get below 5500. Point number 3 is that the length of your M.2 drive does actually matter. The most it could actually be is 22,110, so 2280, 2260, 2242, and 2230 actually do work with the PS5. Fortunately, most M.2s are 2280, so it's going to work with the PS5, so this is rarely going to ever be an issue for you. And the fact that it actually takes up to 22,110 means that in the future, if SSD makers actually make longer SSDs, that means it's gonna work with the PS5. And in case you don't know, 2210, what it means is that it's 22 millimeters going up and 110 millimeters going left to right. Point number 4, which has actually gone under the radar and hasn't really been addressed too much on the PS5 forums or from Sony directly, is the fact that whatever M.2 you choose must have a heatsink. And the thing is that not all heatsinks will work. There are certain M.2s where like the heatsink is too big, so you actually have to remove it in that case and install an aftermarket heatsink into it. So be sure that the M.2 heatsink that you choose actually fits within the PS5. So now that we have the criteria down set on what's gonna work with the PS5, let me go into my personal picks on what I think is the best M.2 SSDs to choose for the PS5. Now the two main SSDs that everybody always gravitates to is the Seagate FireCuda 530 and the Western Digital SN580. Now for the Seagate FireCuda 530, I know that's a hot choice for a lot of people because it actually is advertised at 73 megabytes per second, which you're gonna find out is actually faster than the rest that are on the list. But one thing to note is that it happens to be the most expensive on the list. So although it does have a slightly faster read speed, it is also very expensive to buy. And just because it's advertised at 7300 megabytes per second doesn't mean that it's actually gonna get 7300 megabytes when you're using it on the PS5. And also, just because it has a higher read speed does not mean that you're gonna be able to see those speeds on the PS5. Once it gets past a certain threshold, it's kind of just extra and it doesn't make a difference on any game that you're playing. So for that reason, I do not recommend that you buy the Seagate FireCuda 530. For my personal pick, if you just want to buy an M.2 SSD that just works and it's just plug and play and you don't want to fuss or do anything about it, get the Western Digital SN580. I think this is the best option right now, and actually it is on sale on Amazon at the moment. So if you're actually trying to get a 1TB or a 500 gig model, you're actually going to get it for way cheaper than you could with the C8 FireCuda. Now, although I do recommend that a lot of people go for the Western Digital SN580 because of its simplicity and the fact that it's just plug and play, there's actually another one that I actually recommend, and the one that I personally bought myself because it's much cheaper and is just as good as the Western Digital SN850. This one here is the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus. And while those other SSDs for 2TB you have to pay $250 for this one it was only $180. So you're saving like $70 by just getting a Sabrent Rocket instead of spending money on a Western Digital or a Seagate FireCuda. The only downside with the Sabrent Rocket is that it does not come with its own individual heatsink. So you do have to buy an aftermarket heatsink to put on this Sabrent Rocket before you can install it into your PS5. Fortunately for us, heatsinks are like $10 to $15, and so you could buy the Sabrent Rocket, buy a heatsink, put them together, and at the end of the day you're gonna be saving like $50 to $60 in total. Now I'm gonna make a whole video on heatsinks and my recommendations for that as well, so when that video comes out it's gonna be linked like up here or in the description or as a pinned comment. But for now, this is the one I chose. It was on Amazon and I think it was like $10 at the end of the day, so it was kind of cheap in my opinion. Now unfortunately I don't have footage of me actually installing this because I am waiting for that heatsink to come in, but once it does come in I'm gonna make a video about it, so guys, check that out. It's going to be linked in the description down below or as a pinned comment. So besides the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus, you do have other options from a lot of notable brands such as Corsair, Samsung, Gigabyte, ADATA, MSI, and so on and so forth. But really, I looked at all these options and at the end of the day, I really do think the Sabrent Rocket is the best choice for the PS5. Just because of its price, and from personal experience from using the Sabrent Rocket on my personal PC, the PC I use to game, the PC I use to edit, I know that it runs perfectly, I never have any glitches, and I got it for a really cheap price compared to its counterparts like the Samsung 980 Pro. Now you do have other options, but just note that this option I'm about to give you is kind of opinionated and I do not recommend it unless you want to live life on the edge. This one here is the Western Digital SN750. This is like the PCI Gen 4 option, but it doesn't run at 5500 megabytes per second. This one here runs at 3600 megabytes per second, and it does come with a free game, which is Battlefield 2042. So you do save a lot of money using this option, and you do get a free game with it, but in the future, it may not actually work with the PS5. And this is simply because it has a 3600 megabytes per second read speed when PS5 has stated that it has to have 5500 megabytes per second read speed. But like I said earlier, Linus Tech Tips did do a test on this and it ended up working even though it had a slower read speed, but this is not something I really do recommend, only if you guys are just like, you know, I'm trying to save as much money as possible. And as a side note, you could actually just sell the game that comes with this one and then you save even more money. Now another option you guys have is that you guys can get an external SSD. Now if you guys go down this route, you could only play PS4 games off that external SSD. For PS5 games, you can only load them onto there, but you cannot play them off the external SSD. What you'd have to do is then take the file from the external SSD, move it back over across to the internal SSD before you could actually play the game. So this is something that I personally haven't done, but I have a lot of friends that do have external SSDs that they use in order to play games and actually get more space. So this is another option to consider. But once again guys, the top pick for me personally is the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus. I'm gonna leave this linked as well as the heatsink that I personally bought. I'm gonna have both of them linked in the description down below so you guys can buy it for yourselves. But other than that guys, that concludes today's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And once again, I'm gonna leave the link for all the stuff that I talked about in today's video in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, but if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. But with that being said, guys, my name is Matthew. Thank you so much for watching, but as always, peace out.